They shook your hand with a smile, but in their other hand, they held the knife. They called you brother, but only while you were useful. They clapped for your victories until your victories outshone theirs. Most people call this paranoia, but Machiavelli called it wisdom. The most dangerous illusion we're sold is this: that loyalty is sacred, that friendships are unconditional, that kindness guarantees safety. But in the game of power, no one is truly your friend, not in the way you hope. Look around you. Every alliance, every smile, every "I've got your back." It's not built on love. It's built on leverage. Even affection has an economy. Even intimacy has its price. People align with you because you serve a function: emotional, financial, social, psychological. And the moment that function ends, so does the illusion. You felt this before. In the friend who disappeared after you set a boundary. In the co-worker who changed when you got promoted. In the lover who stopped calling once you stopped chasing. This isn't pessimism. This is the beginning of freedom. Because once you see clearly, once you stop playing the fool, once you stop bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage, you change. You start walking like a strategist, not a servant. You move like a lion, not a lamb. And yes, you may feel alone, but that loneliness is clarity. And in that clarity, a new kind of power is born. Let me ask you something. Answer honestly in the comments. Who still stands beside you when you're no longer convenient? Who claps when you rise? And more importantly, who hides their applause and hopes you fall? This isn't about cynicism. It's about awakening. Because what Machiavelli knew, and what most people fear to admit, is this: no one is your friend. And that's your greatest advantage. Part 1. The transaction behind every smile. No one wakes up hoping to be betrayed. But betrayal doesn't arrive with a scream. It walks in quietly in the form of absence, in the silence of someone who once swore they'd never leave. You call them a friend. Machiavelli would call them a temporary alliance. Because in the real world, loyalty isn't built on love. It's built on leverage, need, usefulness. So ask yourself, who feeds off your presence? Who wins when you're silent? Who shines brighter when you're standing still? Most people don't love you. They love the way they feel when they're next to you. And when that feeling fades, so does their allegiance. Let's go deeper. Picture two men in the royal court of Florence. They toast a loyalty, swear brotherhood, smile wide, clasp hands, but under the table, both grip a dagger, because only one will rise. Only one will win the prince's favor. The other will vanish. Behind every smile, there's a question. Are you still useful to me? Machiavelli saw this daily. Nobles who bowed by day and conspired by candlelight. He understood. Loyalty is not unconditional. It is rented, never owned, paid in currency. Fear, admiration, opportunity, advantage. And when the rent isn't paid, the smile fades. The applause stops. The mask slips. This isn't bitterness. This is vision. Because when you see the transaction, you stop mistaking proximity for trust. Stop confusing praise with respect. Stop thinking silence means support. Machiavelli once wrote, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." You don't need to memorize that line. You've already lived it. Remember, the friend who vanished the moment you started setting boundaries. The lover who shifted the second you stopped being their therapist. The colleague who once cheered but fell silent when you surpassed them. They didn't leave because you changed. They left because you stopped being their ladder. Your rise exposed their stagnation. So what do? You stop giving blind loyalty. You build alliances, ones based on clarity, not hope. You don't ask, do they like me? You ask, what do I symbolize to them? Because in this world, most relationships are not bonds. They're contracts. Unspoken, unacknowledged, but deeply real. You want freedom? Then stop giving yourself away for validation and start investing where leverage flows both ways. Because when someone smiles at you, yes, it might be real, but it's also a strategy. So smile back, but keep your sword sharp. Part 2. Why loyalty is an illusion. Loyalty sounds sacred, like something carved in stone, like a bond forged in fire, like forever. But that's the fairy tale version. The one we grew up watching, not the one we actually lived. Because in the real world, loyalty has a cost. And people only pay that cost while the reward is still worth it. Machiavelli saw it clearly. He wrote, "Men forget the death of their father more easily than the loss of their inheritance." That wasn't cruelty. It was reality. People aren't loyal to you. They're loyal to the feeling they get from you, the access, the elevation, the sense of advantage. And when that benefit ends, so does the illusion. You've seen it. The friend who promised will always be close. The partner who whispered, "I'll never walk away." The team who shouted, "We rise together." Now ask yourself, where are they now? Gone. Not because they lied, but because the terms of the unspoken contract expired. Machiavelli didn't hate loyalty. He just never romanticized it. He saw it for what it was, a weather pattern, bright and warm when everything's convenient, cold and vanishing when pressure arrives. So, how do you survive this? You stop assuming loyalty means permanence. You stop treating forever like it's unconditional. And instead, you build leverage that makes leaving costly. Let's be clear, you don't need people who promise to stay. You need people who know that walking away from you would collapse their structure, disrupt their plans, dismantle their position. Because people don't betray what they need. They betray what they think they can replace. You want to be irreplaceable? Then don't just be kind, be necessary. Be the one with the map, the vision, the key they can't duplicate. Be the absence that feels like the room lost its oxygen. And if you've ever been stabbed in the back by someone you trusted, you already know it's not hate that ends loyalty. It's math, cost-benefit calculations disguised as connection. So what's next? You stop chasing blind trust. You build respect. You build systems. You draw boundaries like stone walls around a fortress. You don't beg for allegiance. You make allegiance a privilege. And above all, you never again confuse proximity with permanence. Because the day you expect loyalty without leverage is the day you become the easiest target in the room. Part 3. When kindness becomes your cage. They told you to be kind, to always forgive, to give the benefit of the doubt. And you did. You let it slide when they insulted you. You stayed silent when they took advantage. You kept giving, hoping that someday they'd finally see your heart. But they didn't. They saw your silence as permission, your generosity as a pattern. And your kindness, they used it as a lever to open every door they wanted, until they no longer needed you. Machiavelli would call this the most fatal illusion, because when you lead with kindness without power, you don't earn love, you earn entitlement. But let's go deeper. Where does this begin? Not in adulthood, but in childhood, in the homes where emotions were inconvenient. Being a good kid meant being silent, selfless, agreeable. Needing something made you too much. Love was given only when earned. That's how many of us were trained. We didn't become kind. We became trained to appease, be likable, be low maintenance, put others first, even when it slowly erased us. But here's the truth. In the game of power, predictability is a liability. And kindness without boundaries? That's not virtue. That's bait. The world isn't gentle with the endlessly kind. It bleeds them slowly. Like the man who always says yes until no one hears him anymore. The woman who always forgives until she forgets herself. The friend who never complains until their silence becomes background noise everyone steps over. Machiavelli warned us. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Not because fear is cruel, but because fear protects. Now hear this clearly. This isn't a call to cruelty. It's a call to strategy. It means weaponizing your kindness, to give only when it strengthens your position, to forgive, but only when it cements your leverage, to help, but never at the cost of your own center of gravity. And if someone takes more than they give, pull back. If they mistake your softness for submission, speak less, but watch more. Because every act of kindness that isn't paired with strength becomes a chain, a rope, a cage you built thinking it was a home. People don't test your patience. They test your limits. And if you have none, they keep pushing. and pushing until you disappear inside your own generosity. The solution? Draw the line, not with rage, but with presence. Say less, but mean every word. Give less, but let every gesture echo power. Be the kind of person who can smile with warmth, but carry silence like a sword. That's Machiavellian kindness. Not blind, not naive, but calculated, deliberate, and dangerous. Because the world doesn't need more nice people. It needs people who know when to stop being nice. Part 4. The emotionless always win. You were taught to feel everything, to cry when it hurts, to speak when it stings, to react, to defend, to explode. But the more you express, the more power you gave away. Because in the game of control, the first to react is the first to lose. Machiavelli didn't fear the passionate. He feared the still, the ones who bleed in silence, smile in discomfort, walk away without a word, without a twitch, not because they are weak, but because they are calculating. He knew what most people never learn. A man who cannot master his emotions will always serve one who can. Let's get tactical. In every negotiation, confrontation, moment of pressure, the one who wins is not the loudest, not the smartest, but the one who can withstand the fire without blinking. They're not heartless. They're trained, like a warrior, calm in the storm, focus in chaos, a still blade waiting for the right time to strike. Because emotions are predictable, and what's predictable can be manipulated. If they know what makes you angry, they'll poke it. How to make you chase, they'll run. Silence makes you panic. They'll vanish. It's not malice. It's mechanics. You're either the player or the puppet. So how do you stop being the puppet? You train your nervous system like a soldier sharpens his blade. You learn to feel without reacting, notice without responding, pause when your instinct screams to pounce. This is where true power is born, in the gap between emotion and expression, the space between the trigger and your response. That's your battlefield. And most people lose before they even step into the ring. Because once they can't read you, they can't reach you. And once they can't reach you, you become a ghost in the system, a shadow they can't predict, a force they can't manipulate. Picture this. You walk into a room. Someone tests you, insults you, mocks you. But you don't flinch. You don't defend. You simply observe. And that silence, that stillness, it speaks louder than any rebuttal ever could. It says, I'm not here to react. I'm here to rule. The man who needs to prove his power has none. But the one who can stare through the storm, unshaken, unreadable, untouched, that's the one they fear. That's the one they follow. That's the one they respect. Because emotionally detached don't win by being cold. They win by being prepared. They don't argue with fools. They don't fight every battle. They don't seek understanding. They've mastered the one rule most never will. Control yourself or be controlled. All real power begins with silence. Part 6. Make loyalty obsolete. Build systems, not sentiment. Loyalty sounds like honor. Something etched in blood beyond logic, beyond gain. But in the game of power, loyalty is not a virtue. It's a variable. And variables cannot be trusted. Smart people don't rely on promises. They rely on architecture. They don't hope for devotion. They design necessity. Machiavelli saw this clearly. Men forget the death of their father more easily than the loss of their inheritance. Cold? Yes, but brutally accurate. Because betrayal isn't personal, it's logistical. Consider your own life. That co-founder who called you brother until a series of funding hit. That mentor who guided you until you threatened their status. That partner who swore forever until someone better came along. They didn't change. The math did. You didn't lose because they changed. You lost because the structure allowed it. There were no consequences, costs, friction. Machiavelli never depended on affection. He depended on deterrence. He didn't need them to love him. He needed them to fear the cost of betrayal. This is the new game. Don't seek devotion. Create dependence. Build systems so tight that your absence doesn't hurt feelings. It collapses operations. Make yourself the final bolt in the suspension bridge, not flashy but fatal. Steve Jobs wasn't just a founder. He was Apple's cultural code. When he left, they begged him back. Why? Because his presence wasn't sentimental, it was structural. Ask yourself, if you disappeared tomorrow, would they adapt? You're replaceable, or collapse. Your infrastructure, the framework. 1. Own irreplaceable knowledge. Be the only one who knows how the engine runs. 2. Control the bridges. Be the connector between key people/processes. 3. Design silent deterrence. Make leaving feel like self-sabotage. This isn't dark, it's real. You're already in this game. The only question is, are you playing or being played? People don't betray what they fear losing. They betray what they think they've outgrown. Stop being a memory. Start being a mechanism. Part 7. The cold strategy of solitude. You've been told that being alone is failure, that the man with no crowd must have done something wrong, that solitude means sadness. History disagrees. The most powerful people stood alone first, not by choice, but by necessity, because those who see clearly become threats to those who don't. Machiavelli understood. A prince must learn to be alone in his thinking even when surrounded by people. Why? Because the moment you rely on others for validation, you've handed them the keys to your mind. When you stand with the crowd, you gain comfort. You lose clarity. You absorb their noise, their panic, their projections. When you stand alone, you hear one voice, your own. Strategy clears. Conviction grows fangs. Solitude isn't absence of people. It's presence of self. It's where you stop reacting and start observing. Stop performing and start calculating. Stop being a character in someone else's story. The great tacticians Marcus Aurelius, Otto von Bismarck, weren't surrounded by noise. They were surrounded by distance, feared, misunderstood, always one move ahead. In today's world of constant performance, solitude is even more dangerous because it's rare. While everyone is chasing attention, reacting instantly, needing to be seen, you become the unreadable one, the untouchable one, the shadow they can't predict. The most dangerous man in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one who sits still, listens, smiles faintly, and says almost nothing. His stillness whispers, "I'm not here to react. I'm here to rule." Outro, the final reflection. If you've made it this far, you're not just curious, you're awake. You've seen the mask slip. You've heard the applause fade. You watched loyalty evaporate when convenience ends. Machiavelli would whisper, "There is no morality in war, and life is war disguised as civility." Now what? Don't become bitter, become sharp. Don't isolate in fear. Design your distance. Stop proving yourself. Let silence speak. Stop begging to be seen. Make your absence impossible to ignore. In a world of optics, let others chase validation. You chase leverage. Let them collect fans. You collect leverage points. Let them cry over loyalty. You build alliances that bleed if broken. The strongest move you'll ever make is to stop expecting fairness and start making yourself immune to betrayal. Protect your energy like a crown. Treat every smile like a chess piece. Every handshake like a silent contract. Every promise like a test waiting to be graded. When you lie awake at night, not from fear but awareness, remember, your solitude is no longer a wound, it's your shield. Your silence is no longer desperation, it's your weapon. Your mind, trained in shadows, is your greatest advantage. Let others sleep, you build. Let others play fair, you play to win. Let others crave comfort, you endure clarity. Because those who survive the betrayal, rise through the silence, and walk alone but never off course, they are the ones who lead when the world burns.